wardens won't be ready to go by the time they're deployed. So have no fear about our guys. They're well way away from the action. But the reality of the other war that's going on right now in Ukraine is the war on corruption. And that's the war that I'm currently in the middle of. So I'll describe a little bit about what goes on at the moment in Ukraine. You have an investigative journalist community that is extremely active. There are about 4 full-time TV shows that do nothing but expose corruption in the government. Recently, they slapped the cuffs on senior government officials at a cabinet ministers meeting. They've done the same in terms of the Prosecutor General's office in regional prosecutors just in eastern Ukraine. We have a civil society here, a group of NGOs that are absolutely fearless. I gave out bulletproof vests to some of the guys that I work with just because they were getting a little bit too close to exposing some of the highest levels of corruption. Currently, what we're trying to do is recover the assets that have been pilfered from the country. About $30 billion that's been taken out over the last couple of years from the former president and his cronies. So we're in the middle of trying to get that money back. And on top of that, Friday it was announced that there's a new head of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. They had an open competition, the first one in the history of Ukraine, for which 160 applicants applied, and it was whittled down to 2, and the president selected one on Friday. He's greeted by the fact that Monday we'll sit down with him and we already have an operational plan of how to move forward. And so that's what goes on in a country whose economy is tanked and in the middle of an active war. Now we compare this to the situation in New Brunswick, in which the premier gives money to his dad, and nobody sees a big problem with that. Not only that, the Auditor General comes out and says that was really bad, and we should probably do something about that. And what happens? Is anybody going to pay for that? Is anybody going to be able to recover those assets that are now stashed away someplace safe? Probably not. And so the reality is that developing countries are able to stop corruption from occurring. And we, in one of the most developed countries in the world, are run by a single family. Assets are stripped out of the province. Every natural resource is pilfered, not for the good of the people, but for a small hand of cronies around a ruling oligarch. And every policy is handed to the government and dictated what it's supposed to do. Now, is that really what Canada is about? And when I tell the guys here in Ukraine about the situation in New Brunswick, they always say, oh no, don't tell us that stuff. Because we believe you guys are the ones that are going to help us. And they say, no, it's exactly the opposite. I'm going to bring you guys all over to New Brunswick and we're going to go kick ass there as soon as we're done here. And that's the very sad reality. In one of the most developed countries in the world, we have a level of corruption that occurs in which every single asset of the province is essentially stolen. And there's no other way to describe it. When you collect 0 royalties and tariffs on natural resources, or in some cases pay others to take away the resources, and nothing comes back to the province, it's staggering. And it's staggering to see the $50 million that handed out to relatives. No criminal cases developed, even though there was clear cases of fraud were committed. And I really don't know what we're going to do, except for maybe ask the Swedes to come in and do something about it, because it doesn't look like our own government well. The very strange thing is that if somebody pilfers $25 on his expense account, the entire weight of the law enforcement system would be on them. When we steal hundreds of millions of dollars, well, we just look the other way. And at the point in which you see the dire strait that New Brunswick is in, you can't look at this and not say this has to be a little bit by design. It can't be an incredible coincidence that over the years, almost every single policy on natural resources has been drafted by somebody not within the government. Now, there are some of those in alternative parties who simply look at this and say the problem is weak government. Well, yes, it is true. The government of New Brunswick has been incredibly weak. But who made them that way? And I just don't think that this is all a case of just saying that, well, you know, it's just the government is run by a bunch of idiots. I think those are some pretty smart idiots because they seem to be doing quite well for themselves. Again, $50 million buys a lot of you know, a lot of space in the Cayman Islands and Bahamas and everywhere else. And nobody seems to ask that question. Where is the money gone? Where are the assets from the province gone? Why is everything being privatized and given away to private corporations, which then essentially charge the Brunswickers to go and see and go into their own woods and see their own natural wonders? This can't all be just by an incredible coincidence and not be a group of small elites who essentially have captured the province. And there's always people willing to go along with it, right? So at this point, and those that know me and know that what Charles Theriault and I have been trying to do for the last year, trying to wake up New Brunswick and say it's time to take New Brunswick back, it's time to stop this. We don't have a lot of political allies, sadly. Who's willing to bring up some of these issues.
Donald,
That's pretty much it, right? And the last election was a complete mess in terms of there were many more wins. And so when we look at this, we see that there's a real need for change. And there's a real need for the Brunswickers to band together and say, okay, let's drop all of these private interests that everyone has, and even among political leaders to say, let's put aside our personal interests and look at what we can actually do to make New Brunswick better. We see the dire state. Rural schools are going to be closed down. Hospitals now that are essentially out of beds. We can't even have nursing homes. The only thing they have is old people left. So we can't even take care of that resource, the few resources that we have. Since I came back and started coming back from overseas in 2006, I've been trying to get engaged with the province, but there's very little interest. I was made an ambassador of New Brunswick simply because I kept pestering the Population Growth Secretariat to say, look at how other places do this. Other countries are able to bring in people that are interested in settling. One of the shocking things was, in Germany, there was 4 full-time shows that talk about German migrants everywhere in the world. They did 3 shows about New Brunswick. A 4th one wasn't allowed to go forward. The province shut them down. And it's kind of staggering. Wait a minute, we're desperate in need of people. We have people that actually have the income to come and make their lives. And one of the stories was about a trucker who moved to Bathurst. And, you know, he was getting by, but he had brought with him his wife and 3 kids. So those were 5 new heads that were damn determined to make their life in New Brunswick. And that's probably the kind of people that we need, actually, in the province. Instead, the province is only focused on get-rich-quick schemes, and, you know, it's a sort of scratchy economy that if we just keep buying the lotto tickets, one day we'll hit it. Well, that's not really a way to run a province anymore, is it? And so when we look at the dire state that New Brunswick finds itself in, there's one very simple solution, and that's to really force the government to start doing its business with integrity, and that's what's missing. To take back the resources of the province and have the province actually use them for benefiting New Brunswickers. And that's just not happening. And I don't see a lot of solutions out there, right? I mean, the shale gas issue is the same thing. It's a net loss for the province at the end of the day. Gas prices are at a worldwide low, and the way that New Brunswick does it, it loses money. It loses money off of every single cubic meter of gas that it ships out. And the fact is the roads are irreparably damaged. And in New Brunswick, it costs about $300,000 a kilometer just to repair them. And they're not going to repair them because there's no money in the budget, and there's no resources that are actually generating a benefit for the province to be able to pay for that damage that is actually done. And this is across the board. In every mining operation and everything else, it's always in the loss for the province. And so at the end of the day, you have to say, whose interest is this? There's a small handful of people that are actually making money. And it's not just that big corporation, right? There's plenty of individuals who are lining their own pockets and have been for years on the basis of using their political influence to get board memberships and to get positions in companies and to use whatever time they have in office to benefit themselves. Making large-scale trailer parks, for example, that's my own personal beef at the moment, because I really don't think that Chitty actually turned into a giant trailer park. It's bad enough as it is. So there needs to be a little bit more to economic development in New Brunswick than just these quick rich schemes and looking at selling our natural resources at a loss. And if we go down that road, I see where it leads. And right now in this country, you know, last year they had 1 million people on the streets because they were tired of the corruption. And even Putin came on television 2 days ago and basically said, well, we know that Ukrainians were pissed off because they had a corrupt government. So, completely in opposite of what he was saying before, that it was a coup by fascists and whatever else. No, it was actually ordinary Ukrainians who went on the streets and got pissed off. And for that, 100 of them paid for their lives. And even after they started getting shot by their own police, they were still on the streets demanding for a change in government. And so that's what's going to happen. The province is eventually going to piss off every New Brunswicker to the point that the few that are left will band together, I hope. And this is one of the roles that I see PANB being, is the voice of rural New Brunswick, to be able to unite those people that are the downtrodden out there. And there's lots of them. Because unfortunately, we've seen that our supposedly new Democratic Party is not going to play that role of mobilizing the masses to do something. And the Greens are fairly issue-centered, and they've done a great job on their issues, but are they able to reach out and actually bring in the average rural New Brunswicker? That's really where the people that are getting hurt the most. And we've seen it. And, you know, being a good Albert County boy, it's, there's never a time when I come home and I look around and see what goes on. And even in the places that have a real chance of developing, on the seaside and everything else, we just see nothing but devastation. There's going to be nothing left eventually in the province. And if something isn't done now, and in 4 years from now, when we have the next chance at election, what future really does New Brunswick have? If we fail as a province and Ottawa steps in, is that really going to solve anything? Probably not. It's probably just going to make things worse at the end of the day. So I encourage everybody to get out and mobilize. And one of the things that I really advise is to, in the course of this this meeting that you're at, and that through your annual general meeting, they're able to really come together, put a solid platform together to see what PANB stands for. Because you really are one of the few hopes that the Brunswick has left. And there really needs to be this voice all trodden in the province. And somebody to speak out for the Lubbe-D'Arcy, enough is enough. Especially like rural schools and the hospitals. There's no reason why the province should be a lot of services in the province, and the reason for the Brunswickers much better off. So I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Donald.